start to put tension on my string drawback, I was like, okay, I'm gonna switch.
It's him. You can look at the horns when he's dead. I'm in the zone. Let the arrow go. Just perfect.
When they lose their front doors, you start, that's how you know they're smoking.
Went about 5-10 more yards. He probably went 20 yards. Stepped in, we tried getting back up. And I saw him pull up.
We rushed 4 meters rods that night. We got like 156 and something like that. And then the next day we came up to 163 even.
You're listening to the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table where we talk about the outdoors.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another installment of the White Cat Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and with me here is my other co-host, Tom. What's going on tonight, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
I'm sure people are wondering if you've been a loyal listener for, coming up on 3 years now. This probably sounds a little different, but that's because Frank is not with us here. Tom and I packed up and did one last hunting trip before the year ends. So we are up at a top secret location, deer hunting, and Frank couldn't join us, so it's just me and Tom in studio. But this is the first time we've ever done a remote deal since probably like episode 6 or so. So it's been a while since we've been outside of the studio. So hopefully this goes well. If it sounds a little different than usual, that's why. But I'm going to turn it back over to Tom. Tom, what do we got going on this week? What have we been doing?
So this is day 4 of the New York holiday hunt.
You're giving away our top secret location.
Well, we can tell them it's New York.
Okay.
But other than that, you're going to have to figure that out on your own. So a couple years ago, New York implemented, they call it the holiday hunt. It's an extended inline muzzleloader season that runs from the day after Christmas until January 1st. So what was it, the day after Christmas, me and Nick packed up and headed to this top secret location, and we've been hunting every day since.
We've been doing a little bit more than just hunting, though, correct?
Yes. The landowner, who we've mentioned him before, great guy, Ed's his name, lets us come up here and hunt. And we have a predator problem. We got fox and coyotes on every trail camera daily. So we're up here doing a little predator control. I brought probably a dozen foothold traps and made some sets out there for some fox and coyotes. So
good deal. So I guess we'll go back to our first day of hunting, correct? For me?
Second day.
Second day? Well, first day of hunting though, wasn't it?
No, because first day we both hunted the morning and not a whole lot of action.
That's
then
right.
We
then we
set traps in the afternoon, and then we went on an evening hunt.
Yeah, you're right. So day 2, first day was pretty uneventful.
We were kind of just trying to scout things out, get an idea where the deer were hanging out.
Yeah, see at what time they were moving, that kind of stuff. So like Tom said, midday we went out, set some traps, went out for the evening hunt. Evening hunt was more productive than the morning, but still hadn't really brought anything to fruition yet. So next morning, I actually didn't hunt the early morning just because based on trail camera pictures and firsthand experience the day before, nothing is moving early in the morning. That first light's just been absolutely dead across the board. So I decided I was going to hang back. I got Hank with me, my dog.
Good old Basset Hound.
Yeah, he's actually in camp with us today. He's just sleeping on the couch, making sure nothing happens in the living room. But anyway, so Tom gets back to camp about 9:45, 10 o'clock. And he's like, hey, you want to go check, some traps? I'm like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. So we just get out the door. Tom's carrying his .22 to, dispatch any potential animals and traps. And I was just along for the ride. But before we, started our hike through, Tom mentioned, he said, hey, you ought to bring your muzzleloader, just in case. And I was like, yeah, it's not a bad idea. I'll go grab it. So I head back in, grab it, and we start heading out. And we got, back into the back side of the farm, which is like the, just behind like where the structure is and everything. We get back into the field, And we just start walking down the trail, and there's 2 big does out in the field. So Tom and I both get down, stop what we're doing, and kind of assess the situation. And the one that was a lot bigger definitely saw us. So we were just hunched down, trying to let her settle down. And I'm just slowly trying to get ready. And I didn't have like much of a rest. I was just kind of on my knee, just, we're just walking through. So I asked Tom, I said, hey, how far do you think that is? And nothing. I'm like, Tommy, how far do you think that is? And he's like, oh, it's inside 100. I'm like, all right, okay.
Which, for you listeners that don't inline muzzleloader hunt, inline muzzleloaders aren't like a rifle. So you sight them in at 100 yards, and then out to 200 yards, you might have 6 to 10 inches of drop.
Yeah.
So
it does start tapering off fast where...
Yeah, outside of 100 yards, they really start dropping quick.
And if you guys have listened long enough, you probably have heard me talk about how I suck at judging yardage. Whatever. Sorry about it.
Happens to the best of us.
So anyway, I check with Tom. He's like, yeah, it's inside 100. I'm like, okay. So I'm getting steady, and I wasn't going to rush the shot by any means. If the deer took off, whatever. And we're watching, and all of a sudden she starts flickering her tail. Tom's thinking she's going to take off. And I had just at that point got all situated and, clicked the safety off. Boom! Squeeze off the trigger on my inline. She face first down, rolls like twice, and that was that. I was kind of shocked at how perfect that scenario went. I mean,
oh, yeah. We didn't even get to our first trap yet.
No, it was, absolutely perfect. It was right out in an open field. We were able to take care of it super quick. It was great actually. That was my 4th deer of the year, which is awesome. It's by far my best season to date. And really, sitting here right now, I'm done for the year for hunting.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
And it's kind of sad to see it come to an end, but I think it went out with a bang, literally. And I think I have to chalk this up to the best season I've ever had. I'm talking from the beginning of this year up until now, I've had by far the best season of my entire life. 2
good bucks, 2 big doe.
Yeah, turkey early in the spring. I know it's different licenses, but same year. Like it was a stellar year. So I couldn't be happier to wrap it up with that, and it just worked out just right. I hunted my butt off the rest of the week. Tom and I are sitting in camp on the last day here. We pack up tomorrow and head home. So we're kind of got what we call the Saturday night blues at camp tonight. But the season's over for me. I've had a great time and ended it with a really nice doe. And I cooked the tenderloins that night and did my famous Nick's tenderloin fritters. If you're interested, tell us about it in the comments, and I'll give you my recipe. And then I guess that kind of sums up my trip. I seen nearly 20 doe a day. It was just absolutely insane amount of overpopulation of does up here. But I tried to do my part, took a few out, or I took one out anyway. But yeah, it was good. So I guess I'll turn it back over to Tommy. Got some trapping and hunting on his side.
So my first day of hunting, not real productive. I didn't see any deer in the morning. Like we said, set traps in the afternoon. And then for the evening hunt, I saw 1 doe, just couldn't quite get a shot on her. And day 2, same day Nick got his doe. After, we got that taken care of, we carried on our way, finished checking traps. Traps were empty. So it was time for an evening hunt. And I'm like, well, this doe that Nick got was out in the field shortly after 10 o'clock. They got to be living right in this area. So I picked a stand location, probably, 200 yards down the hedgerow from where you got your doe?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. A little bit north, but yeah.
So there's the field Nick shot his doe. There's a hedgerow, and then there's another field. So I was in that hedgerow looking out into the other field, and right off the bat, I got on stand, I think about 2 o'clock, and 2:15, first deer comes out. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a good night. So at that point, I told myself, I'm like, all right, deer are already moving. I'm going to kind of hold out on a doe for right now, see if a buck comes out here closer to dark. So I get some doe to come out into the field, and this little half rack 4-point comes out. And a little while after that, a decent 2.5-year-old 8, he was probably 14 inches wide. Actually, I can't confirm whether or not he was an 8. I don't know if he had brow tines or not. Comes out into the field, and I'm watching him, and out of the corner of my eye, I catch a tail flick. And I look over, and there's a nice buck standing in the hedgerow. He was 8-point, probably that's 17, 18 inches wide. Not very heavy, not very tall. His G2s were maybe 4 or 5 inches tall. Just a young buck, and a very difficult buck to pass up. But when it's this late in the season, I mean, there's 2 days left in the season. If I don't shoot this deer, there's a very good chance he's going to be on the farm next year. So I made the tough decision to let him go in hopes that next year he'll be around and he'll be a lot bigger. So not long after that, it's getting close to dark, and this group of, I don't know, 10, 12 doe comes out, and I'm like, all right, there's some really nice looking doe in that herd. And I still had a little bit of shooting light left, and I'm like, I'm just going to hold off, watch these doe out in the field, and see if a buck comes out. If a buck doesn't come out, well, I'm going to smoke one of these doe.
Pretty much right at last light.
Yeah, right at last light.
Yep.
So I look down at my phone, and it's about 5 minutes till legal shooting's over. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take one. So this real nice mature doe steps out of the herd, gives me a nice open clear shot. She was probably just over 100 yards, 110 maybe. And I pull up. I was actually using I have one of those extendable arm bow hooks, and I screwed that into the tree and was using that as a rest. And it's not the best, but it helps in a pinch if your stand doesn't have a solid rest. And so I put the crosshairs on her and just squeeze one off. She mule kicks, takes off into the brush. And I'm like, okay, I know I hit her. So I climb down out of the stand, walk to where I seen her run into the brush, find her tracks. There's blood spatter. So I'm like, okay, I think I hit her good. I'm just going to go back to camp. My buddy Keith was on his way in. He was about 45 minutes out at this point. So I'm like, well, we'll wait for Keith. We'll all go track this thing together. So he gets in, we start to track, and about 100 yards in, we bump her, and she's just standing there. So we're like, all right, back out. So we back out, get back to camp around 7 o'clock, and we say, 10 o'clock, we'll go back out. So gave her another 3 hours and go back out, and she wasn't, another 100 yards from where we bumped her?
I was going to say closer to 50 or 60. I mean, it was within 5 minutes we were standing over. It was quick.
So I think we did the right thing backing out.
It just, we could tell, obviously she wasn't doing good. She didn't run away when we bumped her. Like, Tom said bump, but really she didn't take off. She just stood there.
Yeah.
So we knew that obviously.
She stood up from her bed and just, I'm like, she's not doing good.
Yeah. So we just, turned our lights off, backed out, and, we obviously it was the right choice to make. It sucks that we had to bump her once, but, there was snow on the ground, and that was the reason we went back. We've talked many times on the podcast about, like, let them lay if you can. But we had a solid blood trail to follow in snow, but it's 55 degrees. We're going to by morning, that snow is going to be gone, and that blood is going to be gone. So we all decided, round table discussion, that we felt our best opportunity to get this deer would be, give it a few hours and we'll go back.
Yeah. So we did that, and plan worked like a charm. Got her back up to the garage. Me and Nick both got our deer skinned. And it was at nighttime. It was cool enough where we decided we were going to let them hang overnight, let the meat stiffen up a little bit.
Makes
before
it so much easier for quartering out and everything.
Way easier. So got that all situated, got her hung up. Got back to camp. Think we might have had a couple celebratory beers, me and Nick. That's not our first double.
No, we've done that with does a couple times and turkeys
and turkeys twice.
Yeah, twice in one season.
Twice in one weekend.
Yeah, it's wild. But so what did we do with your back straps?
So this is another recipe. We remember when we used to do the smoke break?
I feel like we could do a double smoke break.
Double smoke break for a double doe kill?
Yeah.
So we talked about the fritters. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I haven't given the recipe. So I call them famous, but I don't even want them to get famous because people don't need to be knowing this secret here. It's a family recipe. But anyway, so I call them tenderloin fritters. I don't even know if that's an accurate term. I don't even know what a fritter is. I
think like an apple fritter is like a donut.
Yeah, but like it just doesn't it sound
good?
It
looks like a fritter.
Yeah. So basically what you want to do, you take your tenderloins. You can do this with any cut of meat. But you want something very tender because you want like thin, tender pieces basically. And you want to just chunk them up. I like to get a couple different sizes, some small, some big, but all no bigger than like an inch and an eighth cube. Like anything below that, like it's
very specific.
I'm a specific kind of guy. And then what I do is I like to make a marinade. I get them all cubed up, put them in a marinade. I personally, it seems like it's whatever I'm feeling that night.
Usually started off with some Busch Light.
Yeah, Busch Light always ends up in the marinade. Usually a bunch of Montreal steak seasoning, wash your sister sauce, and whatever else you're feeling. Sometimes some garlic powder, whatever
Onion
you want.
powder.
Yeah, all that stuff. But anyway, I let that sit overnight if you can. Which I couldn't do overnight, but I could do for several hours. I did for about 8 hours, which is pretty good. So then what you do is you take them out of the bag, and you're going to have a cast iron pan, preferably, with about an 1/8 inch of olive oil in the bottom of your pan. So you want it totally covered, a little bit thick, but you don't want to have it like your piece is fully submerged. Get that olive oil nice and hot, ready for frying. And what you're going to do is you're going to take those marinated pieces and you're going to toss them in a seasoned cornstarch. That's the key here. You don't want to use flour. You want to use cornstarch, and you season the cornstarch. So I like to use something similar to what I used in the marinade so you don't get clashing flavors. So I use Montreal steak seasoning. Works out good. And then what you're going to do is you're going to toss it in there, make sure all of the meat is covered with the cornstarch right into the fryer or olive oil, whatever you want to call it. And then you're going to let it cook for a couple minutes till it starts to turn golden brown. Flip it to the other side. Let the same thing out of the oil onto a plate with a paper towel down. And then you just serve it with whatever dipping sauce you want. And I'm telling you, it's probably going to be the best way you've ever had backstrap or tenderloins. It's absolutely phenomenal. I've showed it to several people. Every single time it's a home run. So yeah, that's the Nick's Famous tenderloin fritters. We also did a stew, but this was a recipe I got from Tom, so I will kick the ball back over to Tom's side of the court, and he's going to give you the rundown on that.
So this is a recipe you can either use. I like to do it with venison. You could do it with really any cut of meat, but I prefer to do it with what we refer to as the football or the roast, that front roast off a hind quarter. Or a nice big chunk of backstrap. And in this case, we did use backstrap. So it's about as simple as it gets. It's a crock pot recipe. You put your chunk of meat in the crock pot, dump some Busch Light on her, get a jar of pepper ringers, the banana mild, and dump all the juice and about half the jar of peppers. Get yourself a ranch seasoning packet, 2 of those, sprinkle those in there, and then you can dice up some potatoes, carrots, onions.
Mushrooms, if that's your style.
Yeah, however you want to do it. Nick actually put some gnocchi in it. I thought it was a hit.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% satisfied with it, but it was different, and it wasn't bad.
No, very good. And then you put the lid on the crock pot.
Gnocchi, if you're going to put gnocchi in it, don't put the gnocchi in now, just so you know.
I didn't know. I never put gnocchi in it. This was a tip Nick added.
Yeah.
So I'll let him after this explain when you add the gnocchi. But so put the lid on the crock pot, set her to slow cook, and forget about it.
Yeah, just cook it till the meat is fork tender. You're going to want to throw the gnocchi in like 10 to 15 minutes before you're ready to eat. I mean, like just enough to get them hot, softened up. They were pretty good. It was kind of like, it almost gave it like there was like clumps of mashed potato in there.
It was good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. If you do that, leave it in the comments. Let us know what you think.
And I do have another recipe for you, but we're going to have to wait till, this is just a little sneak preview. I shot a doe with a flintlock muzzleloader in Pennsylvania.
Ooh, yeah, we haven't talked about that.
We haven't talked about it yet. I'm hoping we get the chance to. But I had another recipe that I did with those doe back straps. So when we talk about that hunt, I'll throw that recipe in there.
Yeah, this is going to sound like we're being stupid here, but I am curious if people are interested in these recipes each week. So again, leave it in the comments, and I do mean that for real.
And if you are interested in the recipe, message us and we'll actually type it out.
Yeah, I can give you a full rundown, but like I'm saying, I was more, if people are interested in hearing different ways to prepare their wild game, because we have tons of different recipes, tons of different ways we do things, because Tom and I have heard from people that they get sick of eating wild game. You know, that it gets old, they don't like eating it all the time, they'd rather, do this or that. Tom and I don't feel that way. We've got tons and tons and tons of different recipes. I mean, all sorts of stuff. Our buddies over at Deers and Beers, they've got a really good recipe for like deer quesadilla wraps or something. They're phenomenal. They look phenomenal anyway. I haven't been able to try one yet, but there's just a ton of different ways you can cook wild game. It doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be dry and gamey. There's so many recipes that will make you feel like you're eating a grade A cut of beef. So,
All right, back to the meat and potatoes.
literally.
Well, we're getting off the meat and potatoes, but getting into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, if you follow along. So that was day 2. Me and Nick doubled down. Day 3, I went out for one final morning hunt before I got on board with Nick and said, these morning hunts aren't the way to do it.
It took me one time to decide that I was done on that morning shit.
So I hunted mornings 3 days, never saw a deer in the morning. I said, you know what?
Maybe Nick's on to something.
Yeah. So didn't see anything that morning. And we get back to camp that afternoon, time to check traps. Nothing in my first few sets up on the one side of the farm. And we get in the truck, drive around to the other side, and walking down the trail, first set's empty, and then I get about 100 yards from the second set, and I see this orange patch of fur, and I'm like, no way. So pull up my binos, sure as could be, got a nice red fox in one of my sets. And I'll describe this set for you just because it worked out. So when I set my traps, the ground was rock solid. It was frozen.
It was, I think, 3 degrees.
Yeah, very cold. So
The temperature change that we've experienced in this 4 days is ridiculous.
yeah. So I knew this temperature change was going to happen. And I've had experience with this sort of thing happening when you're doing a dirt hole. You do your dirt hole set in frozen ground, and then you get a thaw, and your dirt hole fills with water.
How many times do you think you can say dirt hole on one podcast?
That's what it's called. So this is in the back of my mind, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a couple of flat sets. And basically...
Is that... You don't use a dirt hole then?
No dirt hole. basically what I used was there was a trail intersection, and I found this patch of grass that was significantly taller than all the other grass in the area. And coyotes and fox, obviously they're canines, they're dogs, and they're have a lot of similarities to your house pet dog. Like they like peeing on fence posts and mailboxes, fire hydrants, marking their territory. So when I saw that tuft of grass that was much higher, I'm like, that would be a really good spot for a canine to mark its territory. So all I did was I kind of fluffed up that tall section of grass. I used my stake driver and pounded just a small hole about as big around as your pinky, maybe 4 or 5 inches deep. And I put some red fox gland lure down in that hole and kind of covered it up. And then I spritzed that tall tuft of grass with coyote urine. And then about 8 inches away from that tuft of grass, that's where I bed my trap right off of there. So coyote or fox, they're going to be walking by. They're going to smell that, hey, another dog came through and marked its territory. I'm going to check this out. And they go sniff around and bam, catch them in your trap. And it worked like a charm. And the reason it works so good is because you don't fill your dirt hole up with water. There is no dirt hole. So
There's 2 more.
Yeah. So that was very exciting. Got myself a nice fox. We're coming at you, well, not live, but this is New Year's Eve tonight.
Yeah. Holy smokes. I say we just keep it rolling till midnight.
Yeah, we should Facebook Live it, or whatever it's called. Party with White Cat.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, we're not going to do that. Don't get your hopes up. We don't have the technology just yet. But if you do want that, leave it in the comments.
There you go.
So, yeah, we're recording New Year's Eve, and I'm pulling my traps New Year's Day. So, actually, when you're listening to this podcast, first thing tomorrow morning, I'll be out there pulling my traps, and you're going to have to wait until our next episode to see what's in them.
Or follow us on Instagram. Might get a sneak peek.
You might.
No guarantees, but you might.
So, I mean, we've been up here for about a week. We've got 2 doe down, 1 fox, and we're not done trapping yet.
Yeah, that's a good way to end it right there on that note. We still got a little bit of time left. It's been, like you said, been a hell of a season. We are coming to a sad ending. It's just, you hate to see it go.
It's inevitable.
Yep. We were talking about that earlier today, about how, it seems like it takes, forever for the hunting season to get here. And then, it feels like a weekend goes by and it's gone, Just comes and goes too quickly. But
if you're like us, when one deer season ends, the next one starts.
Begins would have probably sounded cooler.
Either or. Tomato. Potato.
All right. Well, I guess on that note, Tom and I are going to get back to rotating stock in the beer fridge. Good luck to you guys if you're still out there hunting, and whatever you're doing, just make sure you guys are all still getting outside.
Happy New Year.
Peace. Happy New Year. We love you.